Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talk Advocacy to Me. Thank you so much for tuning in today. My name is Bianca Del Vecchio, and I'm a senior consultant here at Captivate Collective, and I'm going to be your host for today's episode. So, whether you're tuning in live on LinkedIn or you're catching up on the podcast, we're super excited that you're here and that you found us. So, this is, like I said, Talk Advocacy to Me, where we discuss one question related to customer advocacy. And I am thrilled to introduce our guest today. We have the wonderful Alison Bukowski joining us. So Alison is the head of marketing at PeerSpot. And PeerSpot is a buying intelligence platform that helps enterprise tech buyers make better decisions. So I'm personally very excited to have Alison here. I've had the opportunity to work with her on a few initiatives now. PeerSpot is a sponsor of the CAP certification here at Captivate, and Alison is a valued contributor to those sessions. And we are also co-hosting a workshop at Customer XCon in the fall. So Alison, welcome. So happy you're here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bianca. Thanks for having me. I'm really jazzed to talk about this topic today. So I am ready to dive in.
Amazing. I know you are super passionate about this topic, and just chatting before we came on today, just love to hear all of the exciting things we're going to go over today. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our question for today. And it's really all around, what does it take to be a revenue influencer? So before we dive into that, I just want to start off with what comes to mind when we hear the word influencer. I think we hear it a lot these days.
We do, and especially if you're like me and if you have kids in the tween to teen kind of age category. Yeah. I've only recently embraced the term because I realized it was not going to leave my world. But I mean, I think naturally we think of TikTok, we think of Instagram, we think of, the Kardashians or Mr. Beast, who was new to me in the last couple of years because my daughter she's like, guess what Mr. Beast did today. He's like a TikTok influencer, but he does a lot of social responsibility type things. He makes a ton of money. He does crazy things, but then he also donates a whole bunch of money. I think I've got that right. So, but of course now he has cookies and, so when we think of influencer, I think of oversaturation. That's what comes to mind. Whereas I prefer more the, influencing in the ways that we can professionally, which is obviously what we're going to talk about today. But how do we influence customers and prospects, even our colleagues or those within our professional community? So that is how I was able to embrace the word rather than kind of, shy away from it. And now I'm all in.
Now you're all in. I love it. Yeah, I think, it's one of those words that, we, like you said, we hear a lot of, and I'm so interested in the angle that you're presenting it in terms of, what it takes to be an influencer in the work that we do in customer marketing. And I'd love to hear your take on what it means, within the customer advocacy, customer marketing space.
Yeah.
You touched on it a little bit in terms of, really influencing the direction that the business is headed, but would love to get a little more context from that angle.
Yeah. So I think that it's not like it's new. It's not a new concept. I mean, I think that marketing as a whole, that's what we do, right? That is our job ultimately, is to influence revenue. Mm-hmm. Everything that we do, no matter where you sit within the marketing organization, if you're in customer advocacy, if you're in customer marketing, but even the other roles, demand generation, communications, content development, we're all there to fill the funnel. And that's something that, and then we'll probably talk a little bit more about that, but it's I believe, kind of an archaic term. I don't think the term's going to go away. And I don't even think that the shape is incorrect. It's just a matter of how are we filling it? I mean, we talk about kind of like we just talked about influencer being described in that more social, media kind of setting. Yeah. We think of influence from a marketing perspective. It's SQLs, it's MQLs, it's that kind of thing. Whereas does it really have to be about that, which I argue brings about a little more contention within an organization rather than collaboration. So if we can kind of adjust the way that we're thinking about it, I think it opens up the doors, and I think we can actually be, a lot more successful.
When you say contention, are you talking about like ownership of like who's who's bringing in those SQLs and MQLs? Like, tell me a little more about that.
Yeah, that's a big part of it, right? We're all friends when the numbers are being hit, but when the numbers are not being hit or we're missing, targets, specifically sales targets or even renewal targets, from the CS side of the house, then there becomes, well, marketing hasn't provided enough leads, right? They haven't put enough into the funnel where, and we can talk about this too. I would argue it's really not a quantity argument, it's more of a quality argument. And if we start to move and we're not so concerned with how many SQLs came in, how many, MQLs came in, and we look at revenue influence as a big picture, then marketing can focus a lot more on the quality of what we're bringing to the table rather than just hitting sometimes an empty kind of number, because what does that really mean and what does that really turn into? Sometimes I think we've lost sight of, in marketing, what are we here to do? And it really is to influence revenue. I think about it a lot like I think about content. Why do we develop content? And that's a big topic right now too. But it's to improve, right? You think about awareness and brand. It's to educate, and then it's also to inspire. And that's the piece to take action, right? To engage. Right. So that's what I've really focused on, having the privilege of being able to step into a leadership role within marketing and make that pivot and really seeing tremendous results, not just from a numbers perspective, but also an internal collaboration perspective.
Yeah, I think, just hearing you talk about that shift is really interesting. And the value, right? The quality really matters. It's not so much just, like you said, a numbers game, but really finding the right leads that are coming in and using customer-led marketing to really, take the organization in that direction. So when you're thinking about making that shift, you have said you recently stepped into a leadership role. How did you approach taking that direction?
I think that first you have to kind of take a look at the goals, not trying to beat a dead horse. I mean, that comes up a lot lately in, the podcasts that I listen to or conversations about alignment of goals.
Yes.
But it really is critical, because if you don't have that alignment, or you at least don't have that understanding, it's going to be very difficult to move forward. And if you're trying to do something like this, which is more of a, philosophical shift in thinking and business strategy, you have to have the buy-in, and in order to do that, you have to understand so that you can speak intelligently to stakeholders. You can't just show up and be like, here's this amazing plan that I've put together and why we should be revenue influencers and we should just throw out the funnel. You'll get nowhere, right?
Funnel's been around for a long time, right? I mean, the funnel is kind of the
right.
But that doesn't mean that it should stick around if there's a way that you can demonstrate.
And it should stick around. But I actually think starting with the funnel is one of the smartest ways to do it. Why? Because it's been around forever, right? Even if you aren't a marketer, you can put a funnel up on a slide and your C-suite knows what that funnel represents. Sales knows what that funnel represents, right? What we put in, and then, eventually we have an output. But if you toss that funnel, up just like on a PowerPoint slide, and you kind of talk about, okay, we're putting all this stuff in. If you're going the more quantity over quality approach, and you could make the argument, this is what marketing is being asked to do today. When we have those numbers that are set from, where are they coming from? That's another good question to ask. And why? Why are these numbers the way that they are? So one of the things that I said was, if I can get you to the bottom, like what is the number at the bottom of the funnel? And we can do it without having to put so much in, but we focus on the quality. And then, the discussion I had was, if I do that, and if I'm measured, again, we have a goal and I'm measured by the output, but if I'm allowed to have some flexibility and some autonomy to decide how we go about what goes into the funnel. And that's where I think customer led is huge. I mean, everybody who's listening to this or will listen to this knows the value of, customer advocacy and customer marketing. That's a nice way to dip your toes right into the water using something that's very approachable. And then if you can, then we can even talk like ABM and stuff like that and how that is really successful as one of like the levers or the strategies that you can use to get there and to get your buy-in.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about ABM because that's another term that we hear coming up more and more in the terms of advocacy, right? So how are you approaching that? What's been your experience incorporating that into the way you're approaching it?
Yeah, so the beauty of ABM is that it's not even customer marketing and advocacy adjacent. I would say that they overlap. When you think about it, customer advocacy over the last decade, right, as that has shifted, well, it's kind of ABM, really, in a nutshell. I mean, it's giving, creating programs and channels and platforms and ways that you can deepen relationships, which is what is at the heart of an account-based marketing strategy. I would argue that ABM is also synonymous kind of with what I'm saying with this quality over quantity approach. And instead of use spray and pray, like throw spaghetti at the wall, see what sticks. Instead of that, let's be smarter and use the knowledge that we have. Now, I would caution everyone that ABM is wonderful, but ABM cannot be applied across, a business. Even if you're a small to medium size organization, it gets very difficult to say we're all in and that's all we're going to do, because how do you possibly do that without burnout, and how do you do it well? So for me, it was focusing on enterprise accounts, larger accounts where there's a fair amount of expansion, opportunity. That makes sense, right? Leverage what you know about an organization, help the organization achieve goals. And then also, I didn't want to just draw the line in the sand with that. So there's actually kind of a nomination and exception process that we have in place so that we can take a look at case by case, because I'm only one me. Right. And, the team is small and mighty. So, and I always want to make sure if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it well, or at least try to do it well. So making sure you keep those like guardrails up is really important.
So with the nomination exceptions process, that just narrows the focus down so that you're paying attention where you really have the opportunity to move the needle on those accounts.
Exactly. And asking questions and kind of challenging, typically it would be CS, that would, so a CSM would bring that and say, okay, well, they're not necessarily what we call, one of our large accounts, but here, and we look at things like, size of the organization. What is our footprint within the organization? What are the actual business problems? Again, to go very customer led. What are the business challenges that the organization is trying to solve for? And does it make sense to apply more concentrated resources? And that has proven very successful. So that's why I wanted to talk about that today, because I think it's a nice way to make a case to start to have a shift, because you're not going to be able to just walk in and say, here you go. There's not a lot of head of marketing or CMOs that will just, okay, we're going to toss out everything that we've been doing and bring in something new. But if they're open and they already believe in the value of customer marketing and customer advocacy, the door is open. So right. I just want people to, kick it a little bit, keep nudging it.
Start going in that direction and making the case. Right. Yeah, because once that door opens, right, there's a lot of goodness that comes from taking that direction. But it's starting off with that shift, right? Like, how do you start the conversation? Yeah. How do you do that if you're working in an organization that is primarily, focused on those metrics that are quantity over quality? What's the first step to take?
And I think you can do that from organizational goals and also individual KPIs as well, right? And before we get into that as well, I just want to back up a couple of steps for those, because anyone who knows me knows that I'm like a content girl at heart. That's where I started. But there's a huge opportunity, I think, also for advocacy and the role that it plays in the content output,
Yes.
in supporting this kind of strategy, right? There's a lot of opportunities. There's all kinds of, want to talk about influencers. And I think the other thing that when we think about being an influencer, it's gaining momentum, right? It's getting support, and all of a sudden something takes off. And I think AI has done that. We've seen that in the last few months, and it's really interesting to me because I am not 100% on that bandwagon. I think that there's a time and a place. So it's been interesting to see the like all in, and then the kind of a little bit of pulling back now. We've seen a few things popping up in the news. So fear not, content creators and developers out there. When you're focused on, this revenue influencing, you have to bring content that actually is valuable. Back to that whole, like, does it educate? Is it improving something for that, person who's consuming the content? And is it inspiring them? And you're only going to do that if the content is different than the 5,000 other pages of the same stuff that was plugged into an AI tool. So there's another opportunity for that. And that's where customer-led and the customer stories and things like that is only going to keep, I think, rising to the top. It's already way up there, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere.
And I think with just to touch on content for a second and add to that, I think there's just so many new formats as well, and new ways to tell customer stories, ways that you can plug into different campaigns and really just get creative with how we're putting this content out there. Like, I started in advocacy by doing storytelling. That was kind of how I got my start. And I love just seeing how far it's come and how many new formats and just new ways of bringing those stories to life there really are. And I think that's just only going to keep expanding and growing.
Yeah. I mean, look at what we're doing right now. This is, I could easily sit down and put this into a very lengthy social post, or it could be a blog, or, something like that, turn it into an article. But there's a reason why podcasts, there's a reason why videos, there's a reason why TikTok and all of these, platforms have exploded, because we want to consume content differently. Yes, that's true. And yes, it's true that our attention spans have, like, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm the only one out there who wants to read a news article instead of watching a video about it.
Being able to read the transcript. I'm always looking for the transcripts.
I'm a words person, but I will say that what this delivers that I can't do just with pen to paper is a human, connection. I mean, everybody knows where I'm going with that. So I think that's why these versions, but it's still content. It is still education. It's still thought leadership. It's all of those things. So regardless of how you're creating that content, it has a place, and it definitely has a place supporting a revenue influencer, strategy.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, to go back to taking that step and starting to have those conversations, being able to have all these different pieces, right, to pull in, like, to show the content that supports it, to build out the strategies. Where would you recommend someone starts?
So back to goals, right? I said, so we'll start and we'll end. We'll try to put a bow on this conversation. You have to, one, understand the organizational goals. If you, again, that door, right? If you see an opportunity there, if you're looking at something, just an example of campaigns, right? If you're helping support a campaign, and this is something I encourage everyone to look at the organizational goals and then figure out, where do you have an intersection with a fellow marketer? I talk to so many marketers now, and I love it. And I'm saddened actually by how little there's overlap. So if you could influence a campaign, and you can do something with customer voice, et cetera, and it's at like one of those like team level or organizational level goals, like grab it and run with it. And, just knock on, the door, or send a note to somebody in the demand gen department and say, hey, we could really have an opportunity to collaborate here. So that's number one. If you have that opportunity, if you don't see that, or if that feels, a little bit intimidating, or you're not sure if the organization would even entertain, that kind of vision or shift, do it for yourself. Do it with your own KPIs. Many of us, I'm sure, that are listening are also managers, right? And our job as managers is not just to like keep pushing projects forward. It's to lead and to coach and to inspire those on our team to want to do their best work. And if somebody on my team comes to me and says, I feel very strongly about this within my role, and I think that this concept of, being a revenue influencer is really kind of the future, or I think it has a place, can we talk about this? We're all going to be shifting right into Q4 here soon enough, if you happen to follow the calendar year. But with that comes, of course, goal setting discussions, self-evaluations, all of those things that, we have to love it or hate it, we have to do. So why not advocate for yourself and just create just one KPI around, and maybe it's ABM, maybe it's taking some of your advocacy accounts and creating a goal around, content creation. And again, all of these things influence. So if you're going to go with customer stories, that's influencing revenue, right? If you're going to do a cab, that's influencing revenue. If you're doing a customer event, that's influencing revenue. If you're supporting your DG partners with something that's going into a campaign, that's influencing revenue. We're already tracking so much of this stuff. Right. It's just, how do we think about it? So get yourself just one goal.
Yeah, it's the mindset, right? Of like getting into that revenue influencer mindset. Because to answer the question, like, do you have what it takes to be a revenue influencer? I think a lot of us in these roles are already doing it. You're already influencing revenue, but it's about, tracking that, measuring it, just making a commitment to thinking about it in that way.
And celebrate it, right? And make people know what you're doing. So my hope when I asked for this, and I had the conversation with my CEO and CRO about, I really want to do this. Mm-hmm. I believe in this. I'm stepping into, leading the marketing strategy, and they were gracious enough to believe in what I was saying and buying into that. But you have to prove it and then celebrate and like be confident in what you're doing. Because I think if you actually sat down and put pen to paper and looked at your job description, or you looked at like, what are your like goals right now? And with a little tweak, and I'm setting us up to talk about the other thing that I'm super excited about this fall. It with just like a tweak or two, you can shift not the words that are being used, and then also how you're measuring it and how that ties directly to revenue influence, instead of just being about, well, I did 15 case studies, this quarter. Okay, cool. But
how do we tie it back to revenue?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's it's a good way to think about it, because it can feel daunting to totally turn the way that you're thinking and measuring about everything on its head, right? But if you can start looking at the metrics that you already have, how to shift those, and maybe this quarter it's one metric, and maybe there's another KPI you add next quarter and next year. But it's just thinking about it. It's the mindset of stepping into that revenue influencer role within your work.
And make the argument to share the number, which is a little scary when you think about it. Like in my role, my number is sales number, it's CS's number. We share that number. So your number may grow and it may become much larger. But if you actually think about, but now I'm looking at things from an influence perspective. So I'm not sitting there having the argument about, well, it was, 29 MQLs that turned into 13 SQLs. It all goes towards that influence bucket. And that makes a big difference. And back to that whole collaboration kind of mindset. And I think with the goals, you can start to do that. And if you can find a connector goal or a connect, that's what I call those ones where you can,
shared,
collaborate,
totally.
even better.
It becomes a team sport, right? You're all trying
a team sport.
to get the same outcome, and you're all working. You all have different individual, roles that you're playing, but yeah, I love that the connector idea of having those shared metrics. It's not just on you; it's something that you can partner on. And I think it is a good lead into the other piece that we're talking about later in the fall.
Exactly, which is we're doing it together, so I guess it's not I don't want to steal your thunder, but
it's your thunder. We're both going to be we're co-hosting it. So at Customer XCon in the fall, we'll be leading a workshop that is all about taking a look at your KPIs and setting strategic KPIs so that you're not only growing your business and growing the work that you're doing in your organization, but also taking that next step in your career, whatever that may be. That may look different for everyone, but it's using that forward thinking and mapping out where you want to go and how you can add value. So yeah, really exciting.
And we're workshopping it, which is what is really exciting for me. I'm a big fan of Customer XCon, been involved for a long time and have done main stage and have done panels. And this is the first workshop. And I think you and I were both very excited to be able to say, you come into the session, yes, there'll be a little bit of prep that you do. You come in and then you leave with like tangible, outcomes and things that you can apply. And this will be a big piece of it. Obviously, revenue influencer will be there, but it's also more about making sure that everyone feels empowered to turn those individual KPIs into something that is good for you and it's good for the business, because it really should be both.
Yes, and I'm super excited about the format. We can give a little sneak peek, but we're going to do a little. We'll kick it off. We've got an amazing panel lined up, so we'll be able to hear from other people who have done this work, and then, like you said, Alison, just getting that workshopping in and working with your peers and figuring out how this looks together. And actually, on that note, we're doing some research as well. So there will be, we'll share out a link. If you're following on LinkedIn, we'll have a link up and we'll post about it as well. But we'd love just to get people's experience in terms of setting your own KPIs, what role you've played, what those look like. We're going to be sharing that research during our workshop at Customer XCon, but we'll also be sharing it out more broadly as well. So we'd love to have the community input there around what that looks like for you today. And then we'll use that to share out some research and inform the session.
Yep. And you don't have to be going to the conference or anything to participate and provide that. And then that's why we'll share that out. And same thing as I always say, I love connecting. Anyone can certainly reach out and connect with me, because yes, there are not enough, or no, is that a double negative? I don't know. There are not enough hours in the day, that's for sure. But I always find time in the day to talk about this topic and the things that I'm really excited about. So I encourage people to certainly reach out. I'm about as transparent as they come with this stuff.
Well, I am super excited to have you here today. We've got our workshop coming up in the fall. It's an ongoing partnership. It feels like we're working on a couple of things, so that's really exciting. And yeah, like I said, this is a good mindset, I think, to step into and start applying it to the way that you're doing your work, you're measuring your work as a customer marketer, as an advocacy practitioner. And I think, the idea of influencing is, like you said, not just in the social media side of things when it comes to influencers on TikTok and Instagram, but that real application within our own roles and our own organizations to really be that driving force behind how we work with customers and how that flows into other parts of the organization too.
Exactly. And then if you do have kids, you can tell them you're an influencer and they won't believe you for a second. In fact, I asked my daughter, I was like, look, I brought sunglasses today. I could wear these and I would look so cool. And then she's 15 and she said, absolutely do not do something like that. So
I think they're cool. I like them.
they influence me. See, if my kids can be an influencer, everyone else could be an influencer too.
That's
But
right.
we'll do it professionally.
Well, thank you so much, Alison. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, take care, and we will definitely hope to see some of you at Customer XCon in the fall.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody.
Everyone.